Greetings and welcome to the Saroth the Mage Experiment. Today I have a return guest, the fantastic Bobby Hale from Temple Babalon Choronzon. Unfortunately, Leah can't be with us today. She's a bit sick. But how's it going, Bobby?
It's going pretty well. We've been getting every virus coming and going except for COVID over the last couple of months, so we're good still.
Yeah.
No big problems.
Yes, same. I was just saying before we came on that my partner, she works in a primary school and she just constantly picking up bugs from those little people.
Yeah, we have a lot of little guys in and out over here too.
Yeah.
So
Cool. So lovely to see all Leah's paintings in the background there. They kind of stand in for.
Yes, this is her. Yeah,
That's a fantastic red one.
Spirit.
There, it's like a hand.
Yes, that's her Sachat painting.
Oh, that's the shot. Yes.
Yes, she's done a series of what she calls a hanged woman painting over the past.
It's always hanged men. Why not hanged women too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think this one in the center, it actually has her in place because she's doing this whole. It's a project of reattribution, and but this one in the center, I guess you probably can't see it too well, but she was like, I wanted to just prove that I could put it exactly where it goes on the tree in between. What is it? Mercury and Mars.
Yeah. Leah's art, did she always paint when you first met?
Leah did not always, no. I mean, she has always done some sort of art. I think she, when I met her, she had a lot of notebooks full of writing, of cut-ups, of a lot of collages, stuff like that. But I don't think she was painting very much. I think she was inspired by at the time when she got with me, I was doing a lot of just like crazy splatter paintings and stuff like that. And I think that got her kind of into the medium, but she was always much better with form and stuff like that than I was.
Yeah, I've really noticed a progression. That's why I asked.
Absolutely. Yeah. She's had ample time, we both got laid off when COVID first hit. And we've been lucky enough to where we could have her stay home with the children, and she's been able to develop that kind of talent and stuff. It's been pretty great for her and for all of us.
Art and magic, they require time. And that's something I've really struggled with, as you probably know, my lack of work for Temple Babalon Choronzon. I have been involved in a few recent listening post experiments.
Yes.
Could you explain to my lovely audience exactly what is a listening post? Post alpha.
So the idea for what I call listening post alpha actually comes from the fictional story of Major Garland Briggs and Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. And in the television show Twin Peaks, I can't remember which episode it was right off the top of my head, but Major Briggs comes to Dale Cooper with this long printout of kind of a cipher with all these letters and numbers, and none of it makes any sense. It's a lot of static, and then right in the middle it says like the owls are not what they seem, and that's something that the giant had told Dale Cooper in a vision. And then they kind of slowly work you into, what it is that Major Briggs does all day. He's in this highly top secret building out in the middle of the forest in Twin Peaks, monitoring essentially ultra-terrestrial intelligence, looking for any sign of any kind of intermingling between worlds or whatnot. And originally it's an extraterrestrial thing. I think in one of Mark Frost's books, he says that it starts with Project Blue Book, and at that time they're thinking, well, these aliens are from outer space and all this kind of stuff. And then they start realizing that there's maybe something more to it. Maybe it's a little more interdimensional, which is basically, I think, a historical or fictional representation of kind of where people like Jacques Vallée and others went in their theories, you know, while working for the United States government on these types of issues. Anyways, that's his job. He sits and listens all day and looks out for any kind of aberration in the normal static of the cipher or whatever. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I wanted to kind of, with Twin Peaks, I kind of wanted to copy the model of Grant and the Typhonian Gnosis and their connection to Lovecraft, and using it for magical workings and as creating a sort of grammar to speak to the others. And so I thought, well, this would be a perfect opportunity to use my brand new spirit box. And a spirit box is, I mean, we're under no illusion, right, that the spirit box is some sort of like magical, inherently magical object, you know. It's just a little tiny radio. Right here it is. PSB7. And all it does is it sweeps forward and backward very quickly. And you some people use it in different ways. I mean, the classic way to do the sort of electronic voice phenomenon would be to sit and start trying to locate a ghost. Maybe you use some other sort of technology, like you know, what are the things that like look for the heat in the room?
You got those little boxes
in the room, you know, the Ghostbusters
when there's a ghost.
Yeah, it's really not my bag. Like just to be honest. So like I don't really view, I don't know, maybe there's something to that stuff. I don't know. But the spirit box, the appeal for me was that when you put it on your head, it's like an automatic cut up. So this is ultimately a Burroughsian experiment that I'm doing. And but I started using like spirit registers in the temple, like trying to like dial in. For instance, I used Jake Stratton Kent's Grimoire of the Sixfold Star.
Yeah, I have it, but couldn't make head nor tail of it, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, and it's like what's done there is they had divined the EQ people. I'm not sure if he did it by himself or not, but I mean, I'm going to go ahead and credit it to him. But they divined essentially 22 mercurial spirits out of the adorations in chapter 3 of the Book of the Law. And they give, you know, there's information in his book, the Liber 187, and also in the Grimoire of the
serpent tongue.
Yeah, the serpent tongue. Yeah. So what I did is I would go and I would kind of try to dial those entities up. I thought it was a perfect format because they were essentially mercurial. And I would use, for instance, like their associated sigil. I would do maybe an invocation, maybe do the Bornless One ritual or something like that. And then sit down with the spirit box and maybe some dice and like the Thoth Tarot deck. And very often, whatever spirit I was calling up, I would pull the associated tarot card. And so what we're doing here is we're creating a circuit of communication and verification, you know. And so then I would be like more certain that I was hearing the voice of that spirit, you know. And very often I would get stuff that you would expect to hear from a spirit that was associated with the hangman, the Aeon, or something like that. And I thought that was very interesting. It simply raised more questions, you know what I mean? So I thought, well, I'm going to start sort of writing a how-to manual, and I'm going to share it with friends and go ahead and invite people to start experimenting with me, because I'm not really sure like the metaphysical in and outs of this, like what's actually going on here. Is this just am I creating like a really powerful machine for psychological projection, you know. And so yeah, definitely. And so I wanted, you know, is this some Jesus in the toast shit, you know? And so I wanted to share it with people, but this type of thing, some of the things that come across tend to be very personal, you know, and that's another thing. It's, I mean, you can say, well, that's projection, but sometimes it just doesn't feel that way, you know. And so you want to do this in a group setting to get other people's viewpoints and see what it does to other people, and also to be able to get support from people, you know, human beings. So that's why I started listening post alpha. At this point, I guess we have five members, 3 working groups, which Steve, I think, is the only one that's doing the work by himself right now. Other than that, I can't say too much, you know. You can ask me some more questions about it.
Yeah, well, what I found at first, I don't know what I was expecting from the spirit box, but I thought that kind of a supernatural voice would kind of start talking to me. But like you say, what actually happens is it's just scanning through stations. So you're getting snippets of conversations. And at first I found it impossible to even, it was going so quick. Of course, you can vary the speed slightly. But I found it very hard to get anything. And it's a kind of meditation in itself to even be able to tune in and get the words. But I mean, in my first couple of sessions, I found it eerily when Seshat, you know, that just in a female voice as well. And I knew she was a goddess, but I knew nothing about her. And then, yeah, fascinating. So
yeah, you'll hear a word, or you'll get a phrase or something like that. And another step we'll take is, you know, when we're collecting the data of what the words we hear, is then we'll compare words or phrases to the EQ. Now, some members of the group are a little more like religious about doing every single line, every single word. I kind of just do like keywords, things that stick out to me, you know, because what you're doing there sometimes is creating even more static to like wrestle through, you know what I mean, to try to make some meaning out of it. But sometimes I think it's good, you know.
I think single clear words that pop out are definitely.
But I think it's very important to pay attention to what is actually popping up, you know. And if it's a psychological projection event, then even more so, you know what I'm saying? Because that's what you're communicating. That's what is coming out now through you, the medium, you know. And I don't see any difference between doing the work of creating healthy, self-aware psyche and doing magic. You know, I think those two things are very much interconnected.
Absolutely.
I don't really, at this point, I don't think it matters if it's projection or not. You know what I mean? I think that's where I'm coming from. But I do see it in everybody's work. I see some projection. I see some things that are just very, very odd that open up what I would call like a download, you know, like the Seshat thing. It really created quite the web. Yeah, quite the web of meaning and happening, and it's really a beautiful thing. And at its core, what if it's not magic, then I don't know what magic is, you know.
Absolutely. It's just providing, it's just like tarot cards, scrying. It's
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's humorous as well, because in one of them I got a lot of work, 90, and it is a lot of work. And that's Area 51, Typhon, Flaming, Fever. So a lot of it, of course, ties back to, you know, I use the NAEQ because it's just a very simple website to use. You type in the word.
Yeah, the queries and
yeah. And it comes up with, I think it's from all the holy books of Crowley, isn't it? Not just
all the Class A books.
Yeah.
The Class A books. Which I'm a little more radical in that I would say that like all the books are holy.
Yeah. But I also, I kind of like to depart from them a little, you know, and
Absolutely.
start building your own system of correspondences. And that's what you've done. It might be a good time to bring up your fabulous first book, is it, Bobby?
Yeah, that's our first book.
Yeah. So this is the Book of Numbers, Volume 1, UFOs, Aliens, and Ultraterrestrials. And I like the way you describe the Temple BC is a magical art project. And that's one of the things that attracted to me to you, was that you're a kind of multimedia extravaganza of stuff, you know. You're very you're Leah's doing paintings, you've done music, you're drawing popular culture, and a lot, you know, Magick's going through a very kind of serious, I would also not wanting to put anybody down, but there's a lot of kind of historical recreation.
Yeah, like
you know, that
like
stuff.
a sort of a fetishism. Yeah. Like
So it has to be done.
yeah, like some the Pope magic. You know, you have to go back and the old dusty grimoires and all that. And I think there's a lot of wonderful stuff in those old dusty grimoires. I think they're indispensable, but I also think that they're not for everybody, and there's a sort of worldview that maybe is attached that I've never been comfortable with
either
personally. And but I would say that, you know, just the same as what I do is also not for everybody, and there's a certain worldview that's attached that might not be for you, you know, and that's okay. I'm a pretty hardcore relativist, and I'm comfortable with that. That's a hard place to be for people, but magicians who, you know, keep one foot in one world, one foot in the other most of the time would be comfortable with that type of thing. And I think maybe when people start getting really caught up in polemics and stuff like that,
it can only detract from your
instead of magical theory and all that kind of stuff, then I think, or magical, you know, just putting across like what you're doing, here are the results, here's how it works. I mean, that's kind of what I like about Crowley's, like, you know, we need to kind of follow a scientific method, or at least, you know, yeah, we need to, we're working towards verification, reporting, that kind of stuff. But also we need to be sure to be using this stuff to have a very fulfilling life, you know, a good life.
You certainly seem to be at your
if everybody is doing that, then I'm happy. I don't have to believe in anything that I say or do, and I don't have to believe anything that you say or do. I mean, as you pointed out last time, there is a level of bullshit to all of this. You know, the trickster is operative in all this. But the thing that's funny is, like, to go back to the book, and we were talking about this earlier, I have this article in here about Kecksburg. For those who don't know, back in the, let's see.
Are you near Kecksburg, Bobby? Is that your neck of the woods?
Not really, no. It's a few hundred miles to the northeast of me in Pennsylvania.
Oh, right, okay.
So, like, back in the 1960s, there was a crash in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, that people thought was a UFO. There was a panic, and it was roughly around the same time that the Mothman incident happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And so I kind of picked it apart by the EQ, and there were all these interesting happenings and all this, you know, the evidence disappeared. Like, 100 or so people witnessed NASA and FBI agents, like men in black, and taking large things out, something that looked like a large, like, bell shaped object off the property in this wooded area, and now there's a monument to it and all this kind of stuff. So something that definitely happened, you know, something crashed down the woods out there. And so anyways, I kind of look at it through the eyes of the EQ and see what, you know, the Cipher has to say about it, just from the raw correspondences with, you know, the addresses, the toponymy, and then the claims that people make about what it might be. And the official story is that it was a GE Mark II satellite. Well, that equals 81 by the cipher, which equals truth. So there you have it. The official story is true. It was a GE Mark II satellite, if you care what the cipher says and what the government says. But you still have this sort of metaphysical stickiness that goes along with the situation, where now you have the English Kabbalah cipher verifying the truth, you know. So then you're back, you know, like the Ouroboros, to the beginning, asking, what the fuck is this? What is, you know, is there something deeper to this? Okay, maybe the nuts and bolts thing is bullshit. Maybe that wasn't a UFO, but there's something to these types of happenings that create these types of psychic events, you know, these sorts of panics and then these sorts of sort of like reattributions and new holy places, you know, like now you've got this spot where there's this big type UFO looking thing, you know, wasn't there to begin with. It probably wasn't actually a UFO, but now people visit it, feed it all kinds of energy as were real. So that kind of makes it real. You know, it's a hyperstitional, I guess would be the good word for it, a hyperstitional object, you know, that was not real but has become real.
Absolutely. I think that's a really interesting concept that I think, you know, I change every day, but you know, you've got your psychological model, and at the moment the spirit model rules. And if you dare say that anything about the psychological model of Magick on Facebook, you'll get shot down. But I honestly think that humans and our energies and our minds, if we all you know, all of the world people are now into Hecate, so that's building like a Hecate egregore kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah.
And the gods could be, I don't think they're quite as simple as that, but definitely our thoughts empower things and make things real, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, that is part of it, honestly, is sometimes I think that is why those things work so well, because you have a lot of people putting energy into it, you know.
I think that's also how magical orders function. It's, you know,
absolutely.
A whole lot of people, you know, the Kona power of the witches and all that. So
I would say, like, even with listening post alpha, you know, the last one of the last workings we did, it was almost as if there were conversations going on, you know what I mean, between, like, be like, look over there, and then I'm looking over there. It's like it's in the direction that you would be in, actually, like where to our temple, and it's saying something. It's like finishing a sentence from your transmission and stuff like that.
That's fascinating.
And so, I mean, all of this takes a mind to receive it, you know. So to get away from projection, to get away from the psyche wouldn't make much sense. I think, you know, the phenomenological model of psychology, where it's like what you experience, what you perceive is prime. It's the first thing. It's and there's no getting out of that, you know. And so you might experience a goetic demon as a hallucination. You might actually see it, bring it to appearance or something, or you might experience it, you know, as a tarot card and a message or a set of words, or something that pops up in your mind in a hypnagogic state, or a dream.
Mm-hmm.
You as you're sleeping or something like that.
I think altered states of consciousness are definitely, if not 90% of, you know, how to kind of get magical results. Do you use psychedelics yourself, Bob?
Absolutely. Ritually, not for party time. When I was a kid, I actually used to really deal with acid, and like really sometimes experimental acid, and you know, not LSD and stuff like that. So I've had some really deep life-changing trips.
Me too.
You know, that kind of ripped me out of that mind frame of like, this is for a party and stuff like that. And that's really what got me into magic, sort of.
Me too, man. Honestly,
I think to start taking it at least seriously. One of the first sigils I ever did was actually, I hadn't had psychedelics in quite a long time. I was in my early 20s. I had just started college. I was a philosophy major. I was kind of self-taught with the philosophy books when I get to philosophy, and then they're taking me back to this really what I thought was very dry, boring, ancient stuff. And then I learned about this thing called analytic philosophy, which I just, you know, just put me to sleep. And
sounds pretty.
I started getting real fucking bored. But at the same time, I was having new questions about metaphysics, about epistemology, and all this kind of stuff. So the philosophy that I was looking at was working to some degree. It was making me ask better questions. And I thought, well, if I could just maybe go deeper again, you know, maybe get in back and have, you know, a good trip, you know, or something like that, and kind of do work with the setting, and that, you know, use that kind of theory and apply it. And so one of the first real sigils that I did with real intent was for psychedelics. And at the time, I was going through a rough patch, and I was being forced by the state to volunteer at the Salvation Army. Back to the Salvation Army one day for quite a while, and I was bored with this other guy who was like a felon, and he was like just wanted to get the fuck out of there, you know. And we found this big vat, like I don't know how else to describe it other than a vat of purses, right? And we started going through them. We're like, oh man, if we find any money, or it's fair game. We find we get in this one purse, and I pull out like a baggie, and it's fucking psilocybin mushrooms. They're very old, you know.
What are the chances?
Like this is trash. I actually put it in the trash because I'm like, nah. And then I start thinking about like that sigil I did and shit, and I'm like, maybe I should get those and take them. You know, I took them, and that's kind of where my messages in the trash thing comes from.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like and so I pull it out of the trash, and then I go and I have a great trip, and I have some, you know, some slight and an inner light comes on. I start, you know, you can feel a sort of a difference in my perception after I walk away from the situation, and then all of a sudden my life is just flooded by psychedelics, to the point where it was like I couldn't get away. Like I had to move out of state to get away, you know, not just from that, but from all, you know what I mean? Just drugs in general. When I moved to North Carolina to finish up college, I didn't take psychedelics for maybe 3 or 4 years until I came back here. And once again, you know, I could find them easy, but I've got kids, I've got responsibilities, I've got work. I'm older now, you know. When I was a kid, I could trip 2 or 3 times a week and still go to school full time and work full time and function, you know. But like maybe I wasn't functioning. I don't know. But yeah, that it's definitely, so now it's totally tied in with magic with me. And now if I take it, it's ritualistic, and it's
yeah, me too.
I don't fuck with the heroic doses, and I don't know that I ever will.
Yeah, that's what actually got me started on this. You know, I had a huge mushroom trip. It was quite a heroic dose, but we did it in a very ritualized setting. And I went on this great long, it started as a kind of ordeal, but I gradually kind of felt like I was rising, perhaps, you know, you could map it onto the tree of life, maybe.
Like an initiation.
Yeah. And I got a vision of myself as a kind of grizzled, bearded figure covered in runes. And I thought, yeah, this Saroth the Mage thing, it's going to be a YouTube channel, and so it was. But I'd been into magic, but it was a kind of new agey kind of magic, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the most supernatural thing that's ever happened to you in magic? Something that you just can't explain by rational terms or means.
I mean, I kind of, it just never goes away. You know what I mean? Like I feel kind of like once we got the Babalon Choronzon gnosis going, that there was no stepping out of the supernatural. You know what I mean? Like, so every day I'm communing with what we could describe as supernatural entities. Avavago Aspiaon, Babalon Choronzon, Man Samedi, Persetir, and all these entities that are housed in our temple. But I would say I can give you one of the weirdest things.
I
don't know if it's, I wouldn't say, you know, because when I was a kid, I lived in this, like, you know, I could tell these goofy like haunted house stories, but I couldn't be sure that it wasn't just like my older cousins fucking with me.
Yeah.
But I've had these very strange experiences, you know, where it's like too much of a coincidence to not be considered just high strangeness, synchronicity, you know, because it comes along with too much meaning. And again, it's almost like once you get your gnosis intact, once you get your methodology intact, then it's sort of like almost like a cybernetic, like self-referencing system. So that might be part of it. But I kind of file this under the ear apparent. And it, you know, it was, I was working a fast food job at the time, and I had just gotten really obsessed with Twin Peaks. I don't know what it was exactly or why. I guess Leah hadn't seen it. I had watched it, you know, all the way through before, and but I hadn't seen Firewalk with Me. So we had watched all of Twin Peaks, and then this was right after she had the baby. So we're all kind of like, you know, holed up in the basement watching a lot of TV at this time. But we're also doing a lot of cut ups. This table that I'm sitting at right now, it was covered in cut up pieces of paper and notebooks and all kinds of, you know, weird, strange pictures and stuff like that. And we would just sit down and, you know, if we were watching TV or hanging out with the kids or just sitting by ourselves at night, you know, chilling, we would do this kind of stuff, you know, and sometimes something good would come out of it, sometimes not. But this particular day, it was New Year's Day, and we were watching Firewalk with Me, and it comes to the scene where Teresa Banks who's Killer Bob's one of his other murder victims, and she was a prostitute who was, I guess, I don't know if she was like I'm not sure exactly what her situation was. She was like Laura's boss, you know, like, but anyways,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They were like prostitutes, and they you know, they did it together. They prostituted together and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, Teresa ends up dead, and in Firewalk with Me, Agent Chet Desmond and Dale Cooper are checking it out, you know, and this is the scene where the light kind of goes crazy, and they're like, oh, it's a bad transformer, or sorry about that. And then they look under her nail and they find a letter. The letter is T. I see that and I'm like, huh. And then I just pick up out of the pile and it says, see myself. I thought, okay, that's weird. And then so, you know, see who, like, am I the corpse? Is Leah a corpse? Is this, you know? And so, well, I go and I look into the cipher later, and it's like later that day, and see myself equals Teresa Banks.
Wow.
Who's on the table. See myself also equals the corpse. She was the corpse sitting on the table. And then the T obviously in Hebrew gematria would be associated with Teth or the lust card, and
which has Babylon pictured.
Yeah, it has Babylon and who I call Choronzon underneath. And so I thought, wow, that's really wild. And then a couple of days later, and then it just doesn't stop. Like for a few days, nothing, it's just like we're kind of sit with that. It's like, man, that's weird. And now this kind of stuff happens all the time, but so then we go later, I'm at work. There's this one of the guys that works there, he has this girlfriend and she's always hanging around and she's kind of obnoxious, and she's finally got we're always like, man, she needs to get a job. She worked for us. She couldn't last for more than a couple of days. Everything she does is very short term, And so she decided she was going to deliver newspapers, and she was, at the end of the day, if she had any left over, she had a scam where she would just put them on our counter and, put like leave 50 cents or whatever, So this only happens 2 days. And the second day or maybe the first, I can't remember. It's like one of the headlines is the heir apparent, and well, I thought that was weird because the night before I had just watched Blue Velvet because I'm still on this David Lynch kick. I never seen it before. And the one of the first scenes is
the ear in the grass.
Beaumont, he finds an ear laying in the grass, and then that starts this whole like night side journey into the darkness of his town, of his own like repressed sexuality and the repressed sexuality of his neighbors, and all the kind of like dirty, grimy crime shit that they're into, and all this, this totally hidden world.
Very much a hidden world,
of eroticism and magic and strange rituals, and so I see that and I'm like, I liked it because I love puns and stuff like that. And I thought, well, that's cool. I like that. And then I look, the headline right next to it is about Meals on Wheels, and I'm like, well, that's interesting because one of the missing pages in Laura Palmer's diary is
she delivers to the old
she does Meals on Wheels like as a cover, so that like she's doing good things when she's actually out like dealing coke, I think is the thing. So it's like you get a Meals on Wheels headline, and then I kind of look up and there's a sign outside at another restaurant that says, keep a diary. And, it's like, at this point, you have, it's like, what the fuck is this? Am I, because I'm not like having a schizophrenic meltdown, but I'm suddenly immersed in all this information, that is pointing me towards a meaning. I didn't ask for it. That's not what I was looking for that morning. You know what I mean? When I came to work, it was just all there, and that's when I started keeping a diary of Q correspondences and these sorts of happenings. And at first you can see, like, I've taken the stuff down from the blog because a lot of it I'm reworking and editing and going to put out in books in the future in these stuff. But that heir apparent, the first one, it's like, at first, I was saying I wasn't having like a schizophrenic meltdown, but when I read, I'm like, I was clearly like, it flipped me out, and I didn't, and where the line was of like what was, it should be included, or what I mean, was not me.
And I call it a synchronicity mesh, when everything you see is echoing back to you.
It was just like, it blew my mind, and I had been through all kinds of things that had blown my mind before, but I had gotten honestly to the point where I was like, I don't think anything could really flip me out, and but when the fucking signs and the start talking to you and all that kind of shit, then maybe it's like you probably need to talk to them. I worked through it, and that was part of what the writing was. It was also partially therapy, and then later I could go back and look at it and be like, well, this is really interesting. This is garbage, is me just having, and it's funny, like the heir apparent had all these different temptations with the EQ. So for instance, like heir apparent equals like the chosen one.
Yeah.
Equals, but also equals psychopathology. So you know what I mean? It's
That's
like
good. You can see both sides.
Yeah, and what it does, and that's what I love about the cipher itself is like, I mean, starting with like the number 45 equals I am, but it also equals not. So it works that kind of that neti practice that's so important to Kenneth, at least Kenneth Grant in the Typhonian tradition and Austin Spare. It's kind of worked into it. So any kind of like proclamation, like, I am the chosen one is also like, not chosen.
Absolutely. You'll get I was thinking in my bath actually. So Babalon and Choronzon, is that like a dialectic kind of thing going on there?
Absolutely.
So Choronzon is negative, Babalon is positive. Simplistically,
I wouldn't say I don't look at it like that. I mean, sometimes I do, I guess. Like very often I'll actually be like, it's Choronzon. Okay, you know what I mean? But Choronzon I see as like a pesky trickster initiator. He's gonna fuck with you and piss you off and rattle your cage, because if you're trying to ascend, then he's there to make sure that you don't, or to make sure that if you do, that you're worthy, that you're not going to completely lose your fucking mind. And a lot of it's for your own good, what Choronzon does. Crowley says Choronzon is kind of like the master of form, and he's not real. He's not an entity in himself. He is the process by which entities become real and ideas become real, or they don't. So it's like Babylon would be the intermediary. She births Choronzon's abominations, like she births things down into the material realm of form through Choronzon's active energy. Choronzon's passive energy would be receiving you at the outermost abyss. And that's where he gets real fucking tricky, when you're trying to break into, I guess what Crowley would call like the city of pyramids or whatever. Now, I think a lot of that stuff is just, it's like old like Golden Dawn discourse, like it's just another way of saying, higher realms or a greater state of consciousness, and what happens often after you break through the abyss and achieve the supernal triad is a sort of non-dualistic view of the world, and I think Choronzon is there to make sure that that the right ones get through. So I think he is more than any other entity on the tree, a lawman, and I don't think in a sense. I think just like when your father is like, go out at night, that's sort of what you're dealing with Choronzon, except for he'll be like, why the fuck would you want to go out at 9 o'clock?
Yeah, you kind of need that in occult work because you can get very dispersed and spaced out, and so you need a kind of limiting force.
That's his thing. I mean, he disperses, like he is going to disperse the things to the wind in the way that they need to be dispersed, is what I think. You know what I mean? Like, I think Crowley would resent something like that because he wants to, stand around and act like he's the Ipsissimus while his whole life is in shambles and everybody. owes everybody money from one continent to the next and all this kind of shit, you know, and he's a trash person, you know. So I think, yeah, he would definitely resent that creature. And then other people would try to make him sort of like a fascist sort of symbol or something like that, you know, because they would equate him with
like a dictator.
Yeah, or like some sort of Hitlerian sort of presence or something, you know, like he's working to achieve the master race, or you know what I mean, like you know, like you often hear magicians talk about magical discrimination and stuff like that. I think it's kind of the same mindset, you know. And when I hear words like that, I'm thinking, well, that's Choronzon, you know, because not in his negative light, but in his he's testing, you know, always testing, always pushing the boundaries, always checking where you're at, checking where your mind is, if you're sane enough, if you're strong enough, if you deserve it, you know, that kind of stuff. And Babylon is kind of she is at once birthing this process, being birthed through this process, you know. And I think Babylon is also has to be understood non-dualistically. She is, you know, if you want to look at her as the mother, well, yeah, she is that, absolutely. But she's like, if we're looking for like archetypes, like she's at once like a very caring, nurturing, you know, woman, and she's also like Charles Manson's mom.
Yeah,
like, you know, no name Maddox, like you're Nemo. Meet her, you know. I was reading about Charles Manson recently, and I was thinking, you know, this really is kind of, you know, archetypal. Like he's born to this prostitute, this teenage prostitute who doesn't even give him a fucking name, and then he's sort of like he sort of just shifts around all these strange places, all these weird events following around, all this kind of stuff. But
he's got Kentucky connections, doesn't
he?
He
Can't, yeah, absolutely. She can't be bothered to even give him a name because she's too busy, you know, drinking and fucking and you know, having a good fucking time. And that's also a side of Babylon that you have to worship. You know, if you're all in on Babylon, then you have to come to terms with that. You know, that your mother is also a whore. Your mother is also likes nasty stuff. You know, she likes to do dirty shit. Otherwise, you wouldn't fucking be here. You know, and maybe she's not too nice in her soul. Maybe there's a lot of times where she wants to beat your ass. You know, or maybe when she does, it's for your own good. You know, and she's not. You know, I don't, and neither one of Babylon or Choronzon are not nice, you know, but I think if as a devotee of Babylon or Choronzon, you understand what their power is, what they can give you and what you can give them, and they'll show you what your own limitations are. I think that's the most important thing about having a relationship with these two entities. Outside of that, philosophically, I look at their relationship as this, they facilitate sort of a forbidden intercourse. And what I mean by that is like intercourse between humans and spirits, or, you know, classes that don't touch, or, you know, stuff like that. That basic.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, it sounds like what is it that I'm not very versed in Kenneth Grant and his idea of the left-hand path, but it's that kind of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's left-handed, but it also I think it leads ultimately to what would be like a right-handed sort of state of consciousness. You know, ultimately like the classic mystical state of consciousness. You know, that you see across the board, and that, you know, the theosophists kind of aim for, or whatever, you know. You can say whatever you want about theosophy, like whatever, but it's the fact that they point out that, you know, there is a common bond between all mystical paths I think was very important for white people to hear, at least in the last century.
Absolutely. So apart from your work with the cipher and stuff, do you do ritual work? Do you have a daily praxis?
We do have I mean, at first it was we were very serious about ritual work. We still do ritual work time to time. We don't want to blow the fuses, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's powerful.
In the beginning we were doing, I mean, at one point I was doing Carol's work with Choronzon. I was doing that in the Enochian for like, I did it sometimes 2-3 times a day. Then I was doing, we were also doing like our temple banishing ritual, which we wrote earlier.
I recently performed it.
You did. And now you're a deacon of the Temple of Babalon Choronzon.
Thank you, sir.
You will receive your papers very soon.
Can't wait. Yeah, I went all out for that one. I wore my robe. I did the full. I don't often do it, but for that I did, and then I did a listening post. So yeah.
Excellent. And how did that turn out for you? Did you enjoy that ritual?
I did.
Enjoyed it if it was pleasurable.
Yeah.
I kind of really get off on that ritual, you know, and I don't do it much anymore, you know. Like in the beginning when we were building the temple, there was a lot of banishment. Like we were doing banishment all the time. And then I was like, well, really, and I'll call it a banishment, but it's more of an evocation.
Yeah.
You know, I got to where like I was like, I think we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater on this stuff, you know. And I think we need to be more, we just need to tune in a little more to what we're actually trying to bring in and push out. And but we don't do a lot of banishing anymore. We do that ritual from time to time. Also have sort of like what we would call a mass. It's like, but it's just us and the spirits in communion. We do that a couple of times a month, usually around moon cycles. Like we'll do one today, since it's the equinox, where we clean and refill all the dishes, the cups and the plates that we feed the spirits with. And also we light candles for each one. We turn over their tarot card. Each we call our altars the erogenous zones in the temple. Mm-hmm. Has, you know, its own set of cards that we use to speak to it. Some have other things, dice. They all have their own way of speaking to us, and they all have their own tools. And you know, we are in daily concert with these beings, you know what I mean? Like, so we're communing with these beings all the time, and they have their ways of getting in touch if we get out of touch and all that kind of stuff. So it's constant communion. It's a gnosis that we don't step out. There is no, the circle only gets wider, you know what I mean? Like we don't, I can't remember the last time that we did any magic in a circle or any sort of ritual. That like if I'm calling something, I'm usually not doing any banishment work in the beginning. So what you see with LPA and I think what you see with LPA and then our masses that we do, and you know, then we do like sigil work. Obviously we're sigilizing our art. Obviously we're sigilizing music when we do it. I do a lot of work with magic squares. I do a lot of work with Spare's method of sigilization. Like I do it a lot, you know what I mean? As far as like, you know, Solomonic ritual or any kind of like traditional thelemic stuff. Like I did that stuff years ago. Thought it was pretty effective, but I think you get to a point where it's like you don't necessarily need it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think honestly, after years of ritual, and there was a while when I was working my way through the Golden Dawn curriculum. I know it's viewed as quite tepid now, but it's, You know, any prolonged ritual work that you're doing 3
Yeah.
times a day, every day for a year or more is pretty effective. But now, after I did that Isis, Hecate, Astaroth ritual, where I did use the Grimoire Verum floor circle and the robe and the fasting, that was incredibly powerful. And weirdly, I said this on the last video, when I added Isis, Hecate, and Astaroth, it came up as 222, which has been my magical number for 20 years. That was a jaw dropper. But always after a powerful ritual, everything just gets thrown into chaos, and it does kind of reorganize itself in a higher level. You know, when I did that 222 ritual, Melanie kind of temporarily broke up with me because of some issues in my own behavior that I addressed. I got this new, much better job, you know, so I fear the chaos before the reintegration of rituals. I was scared to do yours for a long time. The chaos hasn't been quite as intense, but I feel like it's brought on that energy that, you know, I'd let my channel go. I was drinking a lot, and after doing that, I'm on tea, and I might have a glass of wine tonight. But you know, ritual works, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's important. Is it's what, like I was saying stuff about the grimoires and stuff that, and I'm saying that totally relativistically. Like, I have seen how it works. I know that it works. Ritual works. I think that it's important though to do most rituals in the presence of others, with others. You know, I think this idea that we have now, that's I think it's maybe uniquely Western. I'm not totally sure. I don't want to go out on a limb and say that for sure, but is that, you know, this man going off by himself with his books and sort of, you know, putting the world under his will and all this kind of stuff. I think that's uniquely Western. I think it carries an immense amount of danger. So I don't think there's anything wrong with danger. I mean, like I was just talking about, I did the massive Choronzon, you know, 2 to 3 times a day at one point. And I will tell you that it ripped my view of what was real, what was sacred, what was sane completely apart, you know. And I would call that, you know, the Aeon of Broken Mirrors. And what we're doing with the Temple of Babalon Choronzon is trying to bring back all those pieces and trying to make that mirror complete, you know. And that's
fantastic,
socially and psychologically as well. You know, when I moved back here, I was to this town. I was going through a divorce. It was going through a divorce when we met. You know, we were dealing with major psychological issues, major failures, and all this kind of stuff. And so the work was to kind of push ourselves out of our comfort zone, because that's what had created these problems, is getting too fucking comfortable, getting, you know what I mean? And when you have children and things like that, it's like these situations can be very fragile. So you want to be careful, but, and that's, I think, why you need a community, you know? That's what draws people into like groups like the OTO and stuff like that, is because it can be really fucking, I mean, you know, there was a time when I first started doing magic, nobody I knew was into that shit, you know. The only could find that were around here were like kind of like what they would call Wicca, you know, which was kind of like, I would call it like, you know, like kitchen magic and stuff like that, which is stuff, but it wasn't what I was trying to do, you know. What I was trying to do was definitely more like tantric, Eastern, telepathy, transmutation, you know, that kind of stuff. Like I'm trying to do serious soul work, but through a left-handed sort of path that resonates with me.
You've kind of answered one of my questions that I was going to ask. Is at the moment it seems like you're gathering data. you know, what do you see as the end result of the work that you're doing? And that I think you just told me it's to put together this broken mirror.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process, and I don't know what's at the end of it, other than integration. Working towards evolution of the self, evolution of my family, evolution of my community, evolution of the planet. We still haven't woken up from the nightmare of the 20th century.
Yeah.
As we see with this shit going on.
This century has started pretty horrifically with plague and war.
Yeah, and it's all these things that are very unavoidable if we could just evolve.
I wrote a poem about that.
You know what I mean? But if we could,
very day,
we could just, and that's part of the point for me is always the process. It's always just doing the damn thing. It doesn't matter if the art is good. It doesn't matter if the poem is aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't matter if anybody likes it or not. You know what I mean? What matters is doing it. It doesn't matter if it fucking makes sense. It might not make sense now, and you go back 9 years later, you look at something, and it's, you keep these archives, you keep a diary, That's one of the first things you learn if you join like the OTO or any sort of initiatory group. Golden Dawn, I'm pretty sure too, is, you got to keep your magical diary. I think keeping track, doing these things, it's as old. I mean, this is stuff that the Greeks and the Romans, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, they all did it. This is what we're doing. It's hand to hand, soul to soul, and it's all going somewhere if we can all get real fucking serious about, the destination and waking up, like using keys that were given to us in the past to open the door to a better future. That's all I've got on that. You know what I mean? That's all I'm going for. It's just a better future, a better life, integration, helping people that are hurting, being good, being
fantastic.
That's
why I love you, man.
In your daily life, you know what I mean? And some of us have all kinds of things that all kinds of strange things that we need to do in order to make that happen. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And that's the whole thing about, I think that the conspiracy theorists miss about magic is that a ritual is not about actually doing, like if it's not about doing something terrible. So like a ritual should be an emulation of something terrible, maybe at times, in order to explore what that is and how to either overcome it, bind it, work with it, well, you should not be doing the thing, So like when we look at, for instance, like Crowley talks about the fresh blood of the child. Well, I mean, I'm sure that there is magical energies, there are magical energies in the fresh blood of a child, actual human child, that would be very useful to some evil sorcerer's purposes. Absolutely. But we're looking at these things ritualistically. We're not desperate people. We're not the Aztecs starving to death in the jungle, under threat from invaders and dying left and right of diseases that we don't understand. It's time to grow up, as a people. And so you explore these terrible atavisms, from the past through ritual, and that makes maybe a safe space for your dark side.
Shadow work.
Yeah.
Become a bit of a cliche term now.
Exactly. And people kind of make fun of that now, because everything's just about calling up the demon, getting the thing you want.
Yeah.
I think that's a sometimes that's good, you know, especially if you're desperate, you actually desperately need something, but it's always important to sit and ask, well, why do I have this? You know, to ask yourself real questions, you know, about yourself, to do some investigation of what's going on in here, you know, and also what's going on in the world and how those things are connected. How did I get here? What is this? What am I? But you know, I don't think going back to the sort of brutal nature of the past is going to help us at all. And I don't think that giving these uncharitable sort of interpretations of what, you know, like somebody like Crowley was talking about when he's talking about the fresh blood of a child, I think,
yeah,
about sex magic, we're talking about you know, menstrual blood, or we're talking about semen, you know, and those kinds of that can be the emulated sacrifice, you know, and on it goes with healthy ritualism, you know, but there is a danger in, you know, in people reading that kind of stuff. And
yeah, I think it was probably one of the most irresponsible things he ever wrote.
I think so, but you know, that was his thing, was being a you know, irresponsible beast, and you know, it wasn't his words anyways, you know, which, you know, you can, whatever side of the line you buy on that is fine with me, but yeah, that people don't really get metaphor in mass. I think that's one of our like major psychic problems today, is that wants to take everything very literally. They're always looking for I mean, talk about projection, you know, like and then you have this whole thing about the Hollywood elite are harvesting children for their chemicals in their body.
What's that chemical called again?
Forget. But
silly,
you know,
man,
it's always about always about the children. The children are being hurt. You're hurting the children. You're doing these things to the children, and then you keep seeing these headlines where it's like, you know, QAnon obsessed person kills their children. You know,
to prevent them from being captured by Johnny Depp.
Exactly. Yeah. Or they thought they were, you know, they had dragon blood in the body, or some crazy shit like that. So it's it's people have to, you know, they have to fucking grow up. And I think integrating ritualism, integrating magic, and this stuff that's as old as we are, is extremely important to the personal psyche and the mass psyche, you know.
Spot on, man.
So that's what we're trying to do, is just, you know, turn people on to that kind of view.
Well, I think you're doing a pretty good job. So do you at any point see the Temple Babalon Choronzon becoming like an UTO, or like a initiatory magical order, or you want to keep it
I think it already kind of is that in a way, but yeah, I would like to keep
with
it
many members and degrees and
no. I think that's kind of like just another. It reminds me, to be honest, that kind of stuff has always reminded me of these kind of like pyramid schemes, you know, that my grandmother, we might have got wrapped up in the like 90s, you know. It turns me off, you know, and it's not what we're about. We're not about like these hierarchies and stuff. When I say I'm, you know, when I call myself like the high priest and all this kind of stuff, I mean it to a degree, but in another degree, it's like I'm high and I'm talking a bunch of crazy stuff. And I'm babbling on and on and on. Ultimately, I am a poet and an artist, and I came to all this stuff through that, and I figured out that if you put will into it, if these things are combined with ritual, then you get some effects, you know. And I'm interested in studying those effects, and I'm interested in seeing other people reap the benefits of those effects.
Cool. So,
but not everybody. I know. It's like, I mean, I think if we got if I turn if some people I have seen people literally lose their shit. You know, like I've taught people just spares sigil method, and I've seen people lose their fucking minds. You know, over that kind of stuff. And so I've learned that you have to be careful. If people come to me and they want and we start a relationship, and I'm like, you know, hey, you want to see what we do? You know, then that and you know, that's one thing. You know, I want it to be an intimate thing, not like a sport. You know.
Yeah, well said. So what's next on the book front? Have you ever thought about doing like a how-to, like?
Yeah, we're working. So we've got basically what I'm working on is 2 different series. The one series has already started with the Book of Numbers. There will be several volumes of that. I'm just trying to document strange cases and their correlations within the ALW Cipher. And then the other series will be, yes, an unveiling of the temple practices of the temple entities.
Excellent.
And that our next book will be it's called The House of Every Flower.
The House of Every Flower?
The House of Every Flower. Yes.
Okay, cool. Love it.
Yeah. And that will be out soonish, next couple of months. I'm not trying to rush myself. I'm trying to really work with the editing and get everything as clear as possible so that people can really understand what they're doing. And there will be, you know, a sort of way to connect with these spirits that we have in the temple, but also the point really much in the same way of like Bertot and the voodoo gnosis is to connect to these spirits so that you can open up to your own genius and your own sort of path, you know, in this stuff. That's really what we're trying to do, is just turn people on to a different way of thinking about magic, a different way of doing magic.
Fantastic. Okay, Bob, I think that's I could have got so many clips out of this. You've given freaking fantastic answers today. I love your work. I'm honored to be a
just
part of
babbling on, friend.
It was great, honestly. It's one of the best interviews I've ever done. So we'll call it a day, Bob. Say hi to Leah for me. I'll see you for future.
We love you so much, Steve.
Well, that feeling's entirely mutual, man.
We think you're just great, and there's no reason to let any sort of negative bullshit pull you down. You know what your path is.
I do, sir.
You just stay on it. Just do your thing, brother.
Thank you, Bob. Just before I go, just before I go, a little plug for a thing we're doing later on with Keats Ross, Sam Shadow, Derek Ross, Laird D. Kirk, Nish, Michelle Embry, Callie. A whole bunch of us did this thing last year. It was during COVID, so we thought we'd all get together and do a little party piece each. So I'm doing I did a song yesterday, Dreadful It Is, but it will be posted, and I'll be doing a live poetry reading as well. So that's later on Keats Ross's Prag Magic channel. We should have invited you because you play music, but we didn't.
Yes, we need to hook up with those guys. We really do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Well, I'll re-invite you to the Discord group.
And I really like your harmonica playing, Steve. I really do.
Oh yeah.
Beginning of the last podcast, the harmonica was really great.
I've played for a while, but it's not the greatest solo instrument. I bought myself a guitar.
Yeah, this is great. It's a ritual at the global village.
Absolutely, that's the kind of idea.
The good kind of stuff that came out of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Around playing the drum and doing the shit on the global village context. And I think that's evolution, man. I think it's great, and good luck, guys. And hope to see you soon.
You will. Okay, Bob, thank you very much. See you soon, brother. Oh, that's the wrong button. There we go.